Baldurs Gate 3. This is a game we haven't talked about since December, where we did our final verdict video. I appreciate those of you who showed up for that and supported it in a big way. It did way better than I ever expected for a review that came out like 4 months late. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm immensely appreciative that anyone showed up for that video at all, especially again, given how late it was. Today though, we are kind of late as we're talking about a lot of older news, but I want to put a spotlight on how Larian Studios is just doing the right thing. We have such a, I feel, can't do attitude in the games industry right now. And I understand some of that's business realities, game development struggle realities, complications. I understand and respect all of that, but we have such a can't do attitude constantly. Like, we can't do this. It's difficult to do that now. It's not as easy as it used to be. And so I feel like it's important from time to time to make videos that spotlight developers who are doing it right, who seem to have it figured out and are making things in the modern sense, but feel like it's the old way of doing things, like consistent delivery, answering questions, no shady tactics. That's exactly what Larian's doing right now. Not to put everyone down, to lift them up, but truly I think they're worth celebrating right now. So let's talk about it, shall we? Ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here and you're into the occasional Baldur's Gate 3 video, hopefully more if they do DLC, we'll talk about that at the end of this video, consider subscribing. I want to start off at the top with one that I know the audience here is really going to love, because we talked about a lot of Fallout, a lot of Elder Scrolls, and that's through Bethesda Game Studios, who naturally has a very robust modding community. Now, modding has really expanded beyond the boundaries of BGS in a big, meaningful way, and one of those communities that's done it in a meaningful way is Larian Studios community with the likes of Divinity Original Sin. And yes, they are going all out with an official mod support for Baldur's Gate 3, where it's confirmed on Twitter, we generally don't talk about things till they're ready, but as you may have read, we're making an exception. We've been working on a robust cross-platform plan for mod support to be released later in the year. We love our modding community and we want to support them. It's coming. This reminds me a lot of Cyberpunk's modding community and the way they announced it. We're like, hey, we're going to give you the official tools. We're going to do this right. We want to just give you all the power. And this is immensely exciting because Cyberpunk's community is another one that's like a spotlight when it comes to modding. Some crazy, crazy stuff was added into that game over time. You just got to check it out for yourself. And so when you look at that, you look at BGS, and then you look at the modding community that was there for previous Larian games, and now it's coming to Baldur's Gate 3. This game's gonna have legs, y'all. And it makes sense why they continue to support it in this way. Like, a community-driven support tool is exactly what a game with a base like Baldur's Gate 3 has needs. So I think this is an exciting call. I think this is the right call, and I can't wait to see what people make out of it, right? Just total conversion mods are my jam, as many of you know. Like, when I talked about Starfield and its modding capabilities, I'm like, yo, give me a Star Wars mod, please, for that game. Just a Star Wars conversion mod, and it's over. And maybe I'm just a Star Wars junkie, but I want nothing more than for Larian Studios to make their own sci-fi game. I would lose my mind as someone who's more pro sci-fi than fantasy, which is why when I love something like Baldur's Gate 3 so much, it's a real testament to the talent of the developer, because I like something fantasy. That's kind of crazy, right? But when I look at Baldur's Gate 3, I think to myself, what if Larian made a sci-fi game? So I hope the mods can lead to something like that. I would love to see, I know, total conversion Star Wars mod wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but there's plenty more to get into. As they say that they have a system that needs to be tested, still requires work. We're excited about it. I understand it sucks when the game is updated and mods break. Our community teams will start talking with and looping in the modding community. For now, work continues. To follow this topic, head to the Discord. So they're already aware of the curse that plagues Skyrim, especially every time the mod list is in order, there's a new update. We see that may be happening to Fallout New Vegas, as there's an update seemingly inbound thanks to the Fallout Anthology, and a lot of modders have moved on. So yeah, this is something that Larian's gonna have to adjust to, so it's good they're learning the lesson early and are seemingly going to be bringing in the modding community. There was also a really big patch here that's been broken down by IGN we're going to talk about. It says Baldur's Gate 3's enormous patch 6 adds new and randomized kisses for every romantic partner and a whole lot more. They write, the highlight here is the patch introduces new and randomized kisses for every romantic partner. But that's not all. There are new camp idol animations, new legendary actions for bosses in honor mode to take, as well as quality of life improvements, additions, and fixes based on community feedback. Larian said the new and randomized kisses are unique scenes that, quote, better reflect the personalities of each character, end quote, and have been improved to better accommodate taller and shorter body types. Meanwhile, patch 6 lets players switch to custom mode from any difficulty setting and adds the much requested ability to dismiss recruited companions while speaking to the companion you want to replace them with, which, yes, oh my god, it's going to save a ton of time, as it writes here. Another highlight is that now when a dialogue triggers automatically, Baldur's Gate 3 will try to prioritize your avatar character as the main speaker rather than whoever was in the front of the party, which does mean a little less of a spotlight for Asterion. Okay, so I want to actually highlight one thing here above the content for a top-down view. I know we were talking about Cyberpunk earlier, and one thing that I think the game community got carried away with that I talked about in my launch coverage for that game was what can we say here that's like that's PG friendly, the jiggle physics and the body parts and all that stuff. There was a lot of focus on that. That was like a big headline for Cyberpunk going in, and I get why it was. While it was also hilarious, it was kind of this statement of when you were looking at the game and what was marketed to us, it really seemed like this do-everything game. Like, wow, they're not sparing a single detail. And then you see they're even adding physics to certain body parts that typically don't get seen or really require physics. And it's like, oh, wow, what can't CD Projekt Red do? They're so attentive to every bit of detail. But I took more of, if you will, the skeptics approach, which I know, according to some people's labeling of me, is definitely against the odds for Matty. I'm more of the optimist. But when it comes to something like this, I was thinking to myself, number one, why are these headlines? But number two, shouldn't the focus be on like fine-tuning the game, bug stomping, quests, like the things that make Cyberpunk really pop? Like, these details are great and all, but couldn't it be added later with the way games are made nowadays? And we saw how that went. I think, don't get me wrong, I don't think if you removed certain jiggle physics that suddenly Cyberpunk wouldn't have been as broken at its launch, but maybe it would have helped a little bit if the focus was elsewhere. Nonetheless, though, I know it's not one-to-one translations here, but I look at what they're doing here with Baldur's Gate 3, how they've done a really big-sized romance-focused update. They added their own jiggle physics a couple of updates ago. Before that, around December, if I remember correctly. So they've added all these things in after the game came out. And more importantly, the first big update that they did do was a bunch of epilogue episodes for all the characters at the end of Baldur's Gate 3. So yeah, like, I think the focus and the priority here is right, where normally this is an update I kind of roll my eyes at, I'd be like, all right, gamers, whatever. But seeing this here, when they're adding it, plus so much more on top of that, camp idle animations, legendary actions, quality of life improvements, fixes based on community feedback, and so on and so on. This is all good stuff to me, of course, but I like that they've kind of had a great focus on what made the game strong and then got to this fun, random stuff later in the game. Although, in my opinion, kissing has never really looked particularly right in games. I don't mean to sound like a prude out here, but just the way that the animations work and stuff, it's never looked quite right here. So here's hoping Baldur's Gate 3 got it right for the first time. What I want to end this out with is actually physical retail copies for Baldur's Gate 3. We covered the announcement of those a little bit before our review for Baldur's Gate 3. It's here that we learned that for you Xbox fans out there, and I know many of you watch this channel because we've covered Xbox a lot, you'll see here it was announced the Xbox retail version of Baldur's Gate 3 will indeed have 4 discs, since we're 500 megabytes over the limit for 3. Only option would have been to cut some content out, but that didn't make sense, so confirming 4 and updating it here on the merch store. They say at the bottom it's probable that Wave 1 March 25th date will slip to the first week of April because of this, but we'll start shipping each SKU in order of readiness. PC first, no discs makes life easy, 4 discs hard. Now here's why I respect this, again, from the top-down view. I know there's a lot of shock and awe about like a 4-disc Xbox game, but look, one of my favorite Xbox games is Lost Odyssey. 4 discs, baby. So yeah, this is a pretty normal thing for games I love, it seems. But nonetheless, why this is significant here, and it's probably a testament to how much money that they made off of Baldur's Gate 3, but we'll get into that in a little bit here. This does cost extra cash. Like, I don't know the exact dollars and cents of it all. I don't know if it's just a little bit of a dent or it's a big chip into the wallet and they just think it's worth it, or if they're printing a smaller amount of Xbox copies compared to PlayStation. I'm not sure of the fine tuning to all of those financial decisions, but what I will say is printing an extra disc, putting it in a case, likely having a plastic slot to hold it. All these things do add up the cost, and that will multiply when you print multiple copies of the game, right? So this is a pretty big deal, especially for a platform that there's been some questions around whether or not people will buy the game, which I think suggests that Xbox fans were happy to buy Baldur's Gate 3 and support it, and so they find worth in bringing this over, even if it requires an additional disc. Not that there haven't been cases where certain games need more discs than others. It certainly happened in prior generations, but I think when you're in more of the independent spirit, you have to make more cost-conscious decisions than other companies typically would. You can't just sort of piss the money away effectively. So I respect that here, where it's 4 discs, they're deciding, hey, we're still going to do this anyway. I mean, it wouldn't look good to break the promise regardless of that, but that it's worth it and that it's available and easy to pre-order is a good sign to me. But 4 discs for Baldur's Gate 3 on Xbox because of just 500 megabytes, and I'm glad they didn't cut any content for Xbox fans out there. And as they confirmed, all of the content is going to be on the disc, which is great news unto its own. So really, that leaves us in this interesting spot where the support keeps on rolling for Baldur's Gate 3. They continue to feed this beast, and there have been talks since the launch of this game on DLC saying it's not impossible. They don't know what they want to do yet. And obviously, with the success of Baldur's Gate 3, I think you have to do DLC at this point, not just because your install base is so large, not just because people like the game a lot. I think you do DLC for Baldur's Gate 3 because it makes business sense. If you are Larian and you've grinded your way up with all of these kind of isometric RPGs that spoke to like an audience such as my own, where we reviewed Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2 here on this channel, both when they first came out, and those were videos I was happy to make, but I already knew they weren't going to be super strong performers. Although one of the big surprises was our Original Sin 2 re-review in 2019, which pushed past 250,000 views. So always happy to see that sort of stuff. But nonetheless, when you look at Baldur's Gate 3 and the interest level there and the amount of money you can pull in, I know not everything is about money, especially for a company like Larian, but this would be kind of foolish for them not to take advantage of, right? Like, to make one DLC, whether it be expansion sized or not, who knows what kind of pressure they put onto themselves. But, you know, give yourself effectively something that's going to fatten the wallet a bit. So when you venture out into your next big IP, who knows the guaranteed amount of success that product sees. You know, Baldur's Gate 3 was a perfect storm of, I think, a lot of factors. Number one was a lot of people buying in, willing to make that leap of faith. I think the BioWare quality that we used to know and love was very present in Baldur's Gate 3, and it's been missing in every other game. I think Cyberpunk and Starfield had something to do with it, in that there was a lot of hype for 3 RPGs at that time, and especially so after the launch of Starfield, there was something to kind of bounce off to if you were on PC. So there's a lot of options here on why I think Baldur's Gate 3 found amazing success beyond its own merits, beyond its own quality. And so I just think it makes the most sense to find something to do for DLC. And at the very least here, we see a bunch of updates for free dropping into the game. And so I'm just very keen to see what they do next, because I think it could have the chance to be like Elden Ring DLC level big, where it's just, oh my God, more Baldur's Gate 3. And the way the game does end with that epilogue episode, as I mentioned in my final verdict video, I didn't spoil it or anything, but yeah, it feels like they're setting something up, because that was put in after the game had launched and had success. And in those epilogue episodes, just watch them if you haven't seen them all before. They add a lot to these characters, showing there is more to be seen. So I anticipate they will be doing more in a big way, but we'll see about that. Anyway, I just wanted to go ahead and sing the praises of Baldur's Gate 3 of Larian Studios. So with that, I leave it in your hands. Have you still been playing Baldur's Gate 3? For me, I'll admit I fell off it a little bit because I've been playing a few other things. I've been wrapped up in JRPGs, Tekken, and DBS card game. So I've been pretty busy, but have you still been playing it? Let me know down below. Other than that, take excellent care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.